What up, ninjas? Welcome to BJJAfter40 TV. I'm so excited that you guys are tuning in. Today we're going to be talking about my favorite subject, flexibility. But we're not going to be just talking about physical flexibility. We're also going to be talking about mental flexibility, emotional flexibility, and of course, physical flexibility. Let's start with mental flexibility. Think about jiu-jitsu, the gentle art, also known as the pliable art or the bending art. It's a flexible art. And so when you think about your training, when you roll, do you follow the same patterns every single time? In other words, if you slap and bump hands, do you always pull guard and immediately go for a triangle? Or do you always pass guard to the left every single time? Do you follow these preset patterns? It's kind of like driving to work. If you follow the same pattern every day and you go the same path every single day, you start to create a habit. And habits can be good and bad in your jiu-jitsu. The good thing about habits is that we want to create some muscle memory with our training. So we don't want to have to think about every aspect of everything that we're doing on the mats, right? So if we're passing the guard, we don't want to think about, okay, I got to put my hand here and I got to grab there and then I got to turn my knee and then I got to slide and then I'm going to go out of the guard. If you have to think about all those things, that's too much. So you want some patterns, right? That way you don't have to think about every exact thing that you're doing, but you don't want to become a slave to those patterns. The bad thing about patterns is that if you're following the same path every single time, no matter what it is, whether you're driving to work or practicing jiu-jitsu, following patterns creates laziness with our mind. It's sort of the death of creativity. It's kind of like the difference of using a coloring book, picture to color and draw, versus a blank sheet of paper. A coloring book has a drawing for you. Yeah, you get to fill in some colors and maybe draw on the outside and make it look all pretty, but you're pretty much following someone else's path, someone else's idea, someone else's pattern, versus that blank sheet of paper. That's mental flexibility. You get to create whatever you want, and you want to create that on the mats as well. So when you're rolling, yes, sometimes you want to follow these preset paths, but again, you don't want to become a slave to it. You want to be creative. That's mental flexibility. And it's way more fun when you're creative on the mats. You hear me say at the end of every one of my videos, ninjas, keep molding the clay. Molding the clay requires flexibility. Flexibility in your thinking, flexibility in your movement. So again, mental flexibility means that you allow your mind to be pliable, to be bendable, to be malleable. And you allow yourself to expand and go outside the lines when you need to, but also stay within the lines when you need to exercise more discipline. That's true flexibility with your mental thinking. Let's talk about emotional flexibility. Emotional flexibility. You're gonna have days in jiu-jitsu where you're gonna be so excited about it, and you're gonna have days where you're not so excited about it, where you're gonna be fighting yourself to come to class. And it's important on those days that you allow yourself some emotional flexibility. On one end of the scale you have fear, and on the other end of the scale you have love. And in between there you have all these different emotions, like anger, frustration, happiness, sadness, joy. But on those days when you feel like maybe you're over on this end of the scale, you're not super pumped about jiu-jitsu, but you would really like to get here, it's not gonna happen in a quantum leap. It's gonna happen in small incremental steps. And the first step is to act in spite of how you feel. I act in spite of feeling tired. I act in spite of feeling like I don't want to do it. I act in spite of embarrassment. And so you get yourself to go to class. You allow yourself some emotional flexibility. And then what happens? You go to class and you feel good. I always say that jiu-jitsu fixes everything. So no matter what's going on in your life, that's not when you run from jiu-jitsu, that's when you run to jiu-jitsu. That's allowing yourself emotional flexibility. And sometimes that's gonna come out on the mats too. You're gonna have days when you're rolling and you're gonna feel frustration. You're gonna even feel anger sometimes. And you have to allow yourself in those moments of frustration and anger to allow yourself to move closer to something that's gonna benefit you, so that you have that flexibility. That's emotional flexibility. And that's just not on the mats too, that's in your life as well. Let's talk about physical flexibility. Flexibility in jiu-jitsu is a powerful tool. It's not like other sports where, like, if you're like the guy or girl who rides a mountain bike and you start stretching all the time, yeah, like that's gonna help you, but it's not going to help you like it does in jiu-jitsu, where it gives you an entire new set of tools and skills to work from. So when you're physically flexible and you can do all this cool stuff with your body, it's going to allow your game to be more flexible too, because you can do a lot more stuff. So what I recommend for physical flexibility is start making a habit, a ritual, if you will, of stretching daily. And add movements to your stretch too. So I don't want you to think of stretching like, 8th grade gym class. That's why no one wants to stretch, because you're just sitting on a floor bored stretching. I'm talking about adding movements to your stretches and connecting those movements together so that you're creating something that's awesome and it's gonna really benefit your jiu-jitsu as well. So start creating a ritual daily of stretching. And even if you're not flexible right now, physically flexible, what could you do in 3 months from now? What could you do in 6 months or a year from now or 2 years from now? For myself personally, at 49, I'm way more flexible now than I was at 42 or 40 years old or even 30 years old. And the reason I'm more physically flexible now is because I spend a lot of time stretching. And the reason I do that is because it makes my body more malleable and I can move better and I can escape from positions better, but it also adds these new tools, which makes jiu-jitsu a lot more fun for me. So again, start making a habit of stretching, because again, it's gonna add more to your game and it's also gonna help with your recovery as well. So your mental, emotional, and physical flexibility are sort of like the groundwork, the foundation for your jiu-jitsu. But don't stop there. Keep building on it. Keep working on your flexibility. Make it part of your daily ritual and your daily practice, both emotionally, physically, and mentally. We'll see you on the mats. Os.